Chapter 1. It was April 1968. The end of winter still clung to the morning air, but the light felt new and restless. The train groaned into Willowshade, Ohio, splitting the shadows the trees had drawn across the platform. Isadora Espinal stepped down, breathing in a mix of familiarity and regret. She had promised herself she would never return, yet here she was, suitcase in hand, silence wrapped around her like armor. The soles of her boots clacked against the platform as she made her way toward the exit. Around her, people hurried toward embraces and reunions. But that was not her case. Her return was not voluntary, and her stay would be short. Her mother had died, and with her death came responsibilities, heavy ones, the kind that should have gone to the eldest daughter. But her mother, wise or foolish, had placed them on her youngest instead. A trio of boys raced past, nearly knocking her suitcase from her grip. She pulled it aside just in time. The sight of them stirred a memory she had tried not to revisit. It had been another run, years ago, down Hollowthorn Hill. But that had been no game. She, Juanita, Belén, and their mother had fled her grandfather's shouts, his words chasing them down the slope. And at the bottom, Belén had gasped, "You have stars." Isadora had looked down and seen them, small glimmers blooming across her skin. But her mother hadn't met her eyes right away. And when she finally did, she said, "You will carry what I couldn't. You will break what I had to curse." Isadora had been 7. She had not understood. Later she learned that her mother had brought magic from the Dominican Republic and that it had chosen her that day. But even now, it made no sense. Why her? Why not Juanita or Belén? She tucked the memory away like she had tucked away everything her mother had told her, hoping it would fade along with the curse. She moved past the boys, now being embraced by a pair of grandparents. The adults hold tightened as she walked by. She tried to give them space, but the crowd pressed close. "Excuse me," a voice said just before something struck the back of her leg. "Watch it," Isadora muttered. A man in an army uniform stepped around her to reach a woman in red lipstick and tears. Isadora paused, watching the reunion. The war was everywhere. Headlines of dead offensive losses, protests in the streets. The man was one of the lucky ones. The woman's eyes shifted, locking on Isadora. She whispered something into the soldier's ear. "That's the Espinal girl." The words rode the wind to her like a cold hand. Isadora stopped, turned, and met the woman's stare. Then she nodded, slow, deliberate. The woman flinched, ducking behind the soldier and making the sign of the cross. Satisfied, Isadora headed for the exit. Gossip was no stranger to her. The town still held her family in its mouth like a story it refused to spit out. Isadora lifted her head, refusing to bow it, though she wasn't sure for what, defiance or to petition for patience. The thought made her snort softly. It was then that she saw them. Crows perched on the electric wires above, their dark bodies lined in perfect formation, like sentries on watch. She knew that if her mother were here, she would have said something about them. The thought was enough to bring her voice to Isadora's ear. "They're very smart, you know," her mother would have said in her heavily accented English. And Isadora would have nodded. She had learned not to question her mother's comments. Questions only brought more riddles. And the woman was full of riddles, of ideas that may mean nothing or so much. Isadora never knew. But she was sure of one thing. Her mother had gotten her way, because even in death, Altagracia had figured out a way to pull her back to this place and the curse she had buried here. But Isadora would not step into that house. She would meet the lawyer and Belén at her rental or the library, anywhere but there. At the station's glass doors, her reflection caught her off guard. "Oh," she whispered. She remembered Paris, her shoulders lifted, her head high, her body free, like water moving through a creek, unhindered, unrestricted, entirely her own. She would not give that up. She could not give that up. Inside, the scent of coffee and old paper mingled with the metallic tang of steel and travel. Voices ricocheted off the walls. Through the window, Hollowthorn Hill loomed. Her pulse quickened. "Good afternoon, Miss Espinal," a voice said. Her mouth went dry. For a moment she thought it was her grandfather, but it was only Mr. Green, the shoe shiner, set up in his usual corner. "Mr. Green," she said, forcing a smile. "Are you well?" he asked. His hair was grayer now, his eyes lined with years, but the kindness in them had not changed. "Just a bit travel-worn," she replied. "Well, you need anything, my lady and I are still here," he said warmly. She nodded her thanks, remembering the time he had chased off boys who had thought it funny to threaten her. Her mother had given her no comfort that day. Her grandfather had told her not to make a fuss. At the payphone, she hesitated. She could call Belén, but the weight of eyes on her back pushed her toward the exit instead. Here, she was never anonymous. Outside, the same stone storefront stood with her peeling paint, and Hollowthorn Hill was still brooding, still waiting. She turned her gaze away. Her mother had told her never to look at it directly. That was one instruction she had always obeyed. A flicker of movement drew her eyes. A man stood across the street, gray sideburns, Panama hat, pressed Dominican chabacana. Isadora's suitcase slipped from her grasp, hitting the asphalt with a heavy thud and a rattle of its brass latches. A car horn blared. She realized she was standing in the middle of the street, not even at the crosswalk. When she reached the spot where he had stood, the man was gone. She inhaled sharply, searching for the scent of Dominican cigar. Nothing. Grandpa Salvador was dead. So she straightened herself and began pasting on a small knowing smile for the woman passing by. Better to let them see me composed. She exhaled a sigh of relief when she saw a Plymouth taxi approach. She raised her hand. The driver's eyes flickered with recognition. "Ma'am, you have grown." "Mr. Reynolds, it's so nice to see you," she said, lifting her suitcase. "Don't you do that," he said, taking it from her and placing it gently in the trunk. Inside, the leather interior smelled faintly of cherries. "Are you back to stay?" he asked as he pulled away. "No," she said. "My mother died. Belén and I are settling her affairs." His eyes met hers in the mirror, soft with pity. "Sorry. I imagine that's not easy." The town slid past the window, familiar and strange all at once. I heard about Juanita. My condolences." Her mouth went dry. How many losses could one take before disappearing entirely? Her vision blurred with a tear that trembled at the edge of her lashes. "Thank you," Isadora said, brushing the rebel tear away with her pinky finger. The rest of the ride passed quietly. She noted what the town had changed and what it stubbornly kept the same. Some trees had begun to sprout green, while others stood bare, unwilling to yield to spring. The steady rhythm of the car reminded her that, if not for this journey, she would still be asleep. She closed her eyes, letting herself be enveloped in the scent of cherry and leather. "We're here," Mr. Reynolds said. It was then she realized where they had stopped. The Espinal estate rose ahead, its white paint long gone to gray, the porch sagging as if the weight of the years had been too much. Weeds pushed through the gravel drive, curling toward the headstones in the family cemetery just beyond the house. Her grandfather, her father, Juanita, and now her mother were there. "I'm not staying here," she murmured. Mr. Reynolds didn't move. His gaze lingered on her, questioning. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm not staying here," she said again. "A house this big, empty, uncared for?" he said. "It's not empty," Isadora replied, turning her face away from the sight. The radio crackled. "Understood," Mr. Reynolds said, shifting the car into reverse. The static grew louder as he turned the dial, searching for a song. Instead, a voice emerged, faint, certain. "Come back."